Good evening. I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. Thank you for joining us. And those of you who are joining us for the first time, a very special thank you. CWS is about having conversations with people and how are they using their gifts and talents to help others? How are they making a positive contribution to humanity? And so I'm always looking for people who are doing extraordinary things or doing things extraordinarily well. I say this whenever I come on the show each week, but I believe I can't say it enough that it is my belief that we each have a story to tell. And to me, nothing draws us closer and expresses our humanity more than when we share our stories. Because it's by sharing and not talking only about our successes, but how we overcame our challenges and how often we might have gotten up when we fell. I think that helps us. That helps to connect us in a very special way. And so, very often, I would ask my guests imagine a young person, a young boy or girl somewhere in the world listening to you, not only talking about your successes and being inspired by it, but listening to how you might have overcome a particular challenge and recognizing a similar challenge in themselves. And now imagine that person one day becoming a geneticist, an oncologist, uh, someone who discovers a vaccine that saves millions of lives, someone who stops a genocide, a head of state. We do not know. And to me, is that not knowing, and in spite of not knowing, still giving beyond ourselves, giving without expectations, to me is what really defines us and really speaks to who we are as human beings. It is what defines our character, is to give without making demands on the receiver. And when I say this, I think of some of the great leaders who have gone before us, who have made the ultimate sacrifices, who have put themselves on the line over and over without thinking that they may not be around to see the extent of their sacrifice. And I think of Dr. Martin Luther King. I think of Malcolm X. And in recent times, and I'm very happy that I was alive to witness this giant of a man, Nelson Mandela, who just left us, who has made who have made many sacrifices and came out of prison after 27 years and preached forgiveness and reconciliation. Wow, what a human being. My only hope is that reincarnation is true and that spirit comes back to live on for many other eras so that it can set examples and lead future generations the way Nelson Mandela led us. This month is Women History Month, and I am pleased to say that tonight our guest is a very, words are failing me at this moment, and there are many of my friends who would deny, who would doubt this is happening to me, but very charismatic, very positive, very confident, very selfless, very giving young lady who is going to spend some time with us tonight and share her story. My hope is that by the end of the conversation, we would have a more multifaceted perspective on who she is, but also we would learn something about ourselves. And the young people who are tuning in tonight, I hope that you pay special attention because she is very young. And you know what? I'll take a break right now because we have a packed show. And when I return, I'll introduce you to my guest for tonight, Keilah Johnson. We are back, and those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. The lovely young lady next to me is my guest for tonight, Keilah Johnson. Keilah, good evening.
Hi, Selwyn. How are you?
I am fine, thank you. It's good to have you on tonight. And I want to start the show by just reading your bio.
Okay.
All right. As a social entrepreneur, change agent, and life empowerment coach, Keilah Johnson is fulfilling her passion to empower others to pursue their purpose instead of the world's. Her foundation began with her mother, as she always reminded her to be different. Keilah adopted and established this life goal at a young age. The Atlanta native attended Georgia College in Milledgeville. Is that
Yes,
I got it?
Milledgeville, Georgia.
Milledgeville, Georgia, and took full advantage of her college career by getting involved with over 20 campus organizations, leadership positions, and internships. Immediately after graduating with a Bachelor's of Arts in Liberal Studies, comprised of four disciplines: broadcast journalism, digital media, public speaking, and sociology in May of 2013, she began working as a producer, account executive, and an on air host for Right to Market, a public relations firm in Atlanta. During her time there, Keela produced over 50 videos for businesses and executives, handled all production and several media efforts, including website creation and management, script writing, creative direction, proposal, executive on air coaching, interviewing, camera operating, editing, and delivering. However, after 9 months, she could not ignore the answers or to prayers and signs around her that led to build something that was aligned with her passion. In January of 2013, Keela faithfully resigned from her full-time job to encourage others to not conform to society, but to instead seek God to solve all of life's problems. In May of 2013, Keela founded Truth in Chaos Inc., a nonprofit organization that empowers adolescents and educates adults to resist negative media and societal influences. Since May, Truth in Chaos has worked with over 600 elementary, middle, high school, college, and young adult students around the metro Atlanta area through after school and mentoring programs as well as campaigns and video productions. Her goal is to spread God's love to the world, especially artists and celebrities, so they will realize His love is better than anything you can receive on this earth and the power of their platform. Keela has been featured on CBS News, Wake Up Radio FM, Charge Magazine, Guyana Folk Magazine, and Honey Be Natural Magazine. Impressive. Very
Thank you.
impressive.
Thank you, Selwyn.
Um,
Praise God.
I want to start the show with this scripture. You mentioned it to me. Do not conform to the pattern of this world. Do you recognize that?
I do.
But be transformed by renewing of your mind. Then you will be
Romans
able to
2:2.
test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. How does this scripture resonate with you, and why do you gravitate to it so much?
I think it defines so much of my life and transformation that's occurred in my life. It's an amazing scripture, right? And I think it can apply to so much of what needs to happen today in the world, especially for youth, as we tend to conform to what's happening, the popular thing to do, or like what my passion is conforming to the media. And it's the easiest thing to do, really, when you don't want to stand up for yourself and to stand out and to be different. But in this verse, Romans 12:2, God is calling us to do just that and do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed into who God has called us to be. And I think it's so powerful, and it can apply to really anyone in any point of their lives.
As a native of Atlanta, what was it like growing up, and what did you like doing for fun as a 9 year old?
As a 9-year old, so I'm the youngest of five children.
Hmm.
My mom, she was extremely busy, but she always made sure that we were busy as well. So, if I wasn't at my sister or my brother's soccer practice, I was going to different concerts, like jazz concerts or the art shows, or doing different festivals and having picnics, or just at home and talking with my siblings. But it was always a crazy house. And I would say past 9 years old, growing up in Atlanta, it was very different but interesting.
Let's start with high school, and then college.
Okay.
What were your favorite subjects, and how would you rate yourself as a student?
Oh, so in high school, my favorite subjects. That's a great question. My favorite subject was possibly English,
Mm-hmm.
just the possibility to create anything with your words. And also, I was on the yearbook staff and SGA, so I was able to kind of use writing and that as well. And in college, definitely when I got into my major courses, broadcast journalism, sociology, juvenile, courses about juvenile justice and mass communication in the workplace, persuasion, the art of persuasion for public speaking courses were definitely my favorite.
So, what was school like for you, and how was the transition to college?
School, that's a great question. In high school, I actually uh, found out that I had a learning disability. And it made sense for a lot of my struggle that I endured. Starting actually in fourth grade. In fourth grade, I entered into a magnet program. So from all the way to when I started receiving grades to third grade, I was like, really smart, A's all the time. But when I got in this magnet program, I got my first C ever. And that really continued on to high school. I would study for weeks, which is really not normal in high school because you can study like the night before and still pass. But I would study for weeks before for an exam and still not get higher than maybe like a 75 on a test. And so my mom finally suggested that it might be best for me to go get tested. And I actually did. It was a very long process, but it worked out in the end because I was able to see certain things that I could do to help better my study skills and also some things that I was struggling with that helped me to ease my transition into college more. So that was actually in my senior year of high school when those tests were done, and things about like reading comprehension and stuff like that, it just all clicked because I was like, oh my gosh, I thought that maybe I just needed to study more. And it was great to realize that sometimes it's okay to be different than others, especially in the learning environment as well. And it helped me to go to college and have an easier transition to the schoolwork.
You know, though I'm tempted to ask you how you view that spirit of your life in terms of determination and persistence. What what I'm what I'm present to is that you had a passion for success since then, and for excellence. Is that you wanted to get back to A's, and you kept trying and working hard. I like
Yeah.
that. I like that. For the young students that are listening to you tonight, what advice can you give them about school?
I would say that nowadays, especially when I work with my middle school and high school students, school is not as important in their minds as it should be,
Hmm.
but it's the key to so much in life. And often you're like, oh, okay, the only thing that really matters, like for girls, is that guy, or is texting, or is this selfie that I'm about to post on Facebook, and I don't need to study. And, grades just go to the backside of things, but it's so important to focus on your education and to not only go to class but excel in class and realize that those grades that you're working on now, they're going to get you into a college. Realize that you can go to college even though if you're the first one in your family to go to college, it's possible. You can get scholarships, you can get the job that you want, and to just believe that anything is possible, right? Like Lupita Nyong'o, at the Grammy, she said, any dream is valid. And I think that was such a strong statement that can apply to youth today.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Social entrepreneur, change agent, and life empowerment coach all describe you. If it is fair to ask, which one word best describes you?
I would say change agent
Hmm.
because that line flows through everything. Uh, Empowerment coach, when I'm
Mm.
coaching others, whether it be in business or in life, my goal is to create a change in their lives, a change from where they are now and to where they want to be, or to where I see that they have the potential to be. In social entrepreneur, in Truth and Chaos, I want to create a change in how youth and young adults are affected by pop culture and media. So the change agent is kind of like my role, if you will, in both of those areas. It's my favorite position. It's a role
So
in life.
so I would say that change is this common thread um, within the flag you have woven for yourself.
Yeah, and it took me a while to realize that. I knew
Mm,
growing up that change was very important to me. I love
mm,
change, and I also wanted to encourage others to make changes if they thought that they were just if they were stuck at A. Always get to see that you can get to B and C and D. And so now growing up and maturing, I'm realizing, oh, that's a change agent and encouraging others to make changes. So it's kind of taking its own form.
I have a few questions, or I created a few questions relative to school, to college with you, because you're still so young chronologically. I mean, you have such an old soul, but you're young chronologically, and most of what you do applies or relate to young people. So I have this other question here about college. What do you remember from college that kept you focused on your current path?
Kept me focused.
Hmm.
Oh, that's a tough one. Hmm.
Let's try it another way. Was there an experience, a particular experience in college, that sort of reinforced your determination to succeed?
I think it would be the same answer to both questions. Just me being in the environment. So my first 2 years in college were awful. I hated the school I was at.
Mhm.
And I ended up there because my mom said, this is where God told me that you need to be. And later I found out that reason as well. But it was just my determination to say, okay, this is where I am. This is where I'm going to graduate from. And I know that God has a plan for me here. And I may not like the city, I may not be used to the type of people that are here. I may not like this and that, but what can I do to excel in this situation? What can I do so by the time that I graduate, I don't have any regrets? That I say, I can say that I've done the best that I could do and I have grown as a student, mentally, spiritually, professionally. And so I think that was my determination.
Your mother, I read, advised you to not become a mold of society.
Mhm.
Did you grasp what she meant at the time, and what can you tell us about how it shaped who you are today?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Not at all. I did not grasp what she said. She always, when growing up, she was just like, it's okay if you're different. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing and just be yourself. And I was just like, okay, mom, that's what moms are supposed to say. But growing up and I started to say those same things that she was saying, I was like, oh my gosh, she was on to something, and yeah, it was really cool.
Um, Talking about mom and having grown up, and recognizing some of the things that she may have said to you, some of the pearls of wisdom, I imagine. At what point do you realize, or did you realize, there was a sort of synergy between your views and some of the things that she was telling you since you were a child? Did it come after
Mm.
college, or while you were in college?
It came after college.
Mhm.
I think it actually came in the process of starting Truth and Chaos, with me discovering the voice that I wanted to represent in the world
Mhm.
and hearing so much of what was going on in my mind, and was like, oh, wait, I've heard that before from my mom. And so maybe it took me being in a totally different environment that was just like, this is what I'm going to represent to the world, to have my own voice and to realize how much of an influence that my mom had in that voice.
You mentioned voice. Let's go there. Why
Okay.
is it so important to A, have a voice, B, to own your voice, and C, to represent your voice?
I'm going to forget B and C probably by the time I finish answering A. but I could try to
That's
remember.
okay. That's okay.
Okay, so I think it's important to have a voice
Hmm.
because if you don't have a voice, someone else, you're going to allow someone else to speak for you. Your voice represents who you are. So it's like if you're trying to be someone else, that's almost impossible because you're the best at being you. No one else can be the best you besides you. And so going back to the media, we often try to emulate what we see and create a copy of the images that we see, the messages that we see, and let that be our voice. Let that be what we stand for and our influences. But it's so important to have your own voice because that's who you were created for. That's your purpose. And that's why you were here on this earth to have that voice. And no one's message, no one's voice is going to be the same. And so I think that's the beauty of it.
And what a voice you have because you've answered B, C, and possibly D. Thank
Oh,
you. Let me go to the chat room
awesome.
for a second. Yes. Ash said, "Hi, Keila. I am so proud of the best mentee ever. Yes, you are a change agent. Good night, Cello. Good night, Ash." And Ash said again, her nervous curiosity, I'd say. And I admire her relationship with her mom and her sister. Keila, what
Oh.
drives you?
Mm. God,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think going deeper, wanting others to know God like I seek to know Him.
Mm. Do you ever get frustrated on that quest?
Trying to get others to know God or me
Yes.
seeking God.
No, not you, but trying to get others.
Yes,
Hmm.
it is. It is a little frustrating. And I think the most frustrating part for me comes in not when I'm reaching out to students in the community because I can, some of them, it's the first time hearing about God's love for them. But mostly when people are close to me, like close friends and family members, and just trying to get them to realize a lot of the frustrations that you're having in life, a lot of the love that you're seeking from the world, you really need it from Christ. And that's the only person that can give you everlasting love. But I just have to realize that it's only a seed that we can plant, and God can only water that seed. And so it's just like planting it and, allowing God to do the rest.
I want to explore the flip side to this, only because you asked it, and that is challenges or frustration with you seeking God. But let me add a little bit to that. Have you ever been challenged by your peers or by young people about that particular quest?
Me seeking God?
Yes, you seeking God.
Hmm. I don't think there was a little bit of question. Um, I wouldn't say question, but um, sort of when, because I wasn't always, this person. I grew up in a Christian household,
Hmm.
but I wasn't always like, I want you to know Christ. I would sometimes be like, okay, girl, I pray for you. But I wasn't like, okay, let's pray right now. Like, what's going on in your life? And so I think there was a point where people around me had to realize that she has transformed into a different person.
Hmm.
And there might have been a little hesitation on that. Um, but I don't think a question.
So it was kind of like lead the way before you can lead others. Then. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. I like that.
Yeah.
When you think of change, what is the one thing that always comes to mind?
Progress, bettering yourself and others.
I am
Um,
I'm a student here tonight, Keila. I want you to know that I'm learning from you.
oh,
Um, what is the trigger that led you to want a career in empowering others?
when I did an internship, two
Hmm.
internships in New York,
Hmm.
and the first one that I did was I stayed with family in Brooklyn, and it was at WNYC New York Public Radio,
Hmm.
and I went there a different person than I left. And a lot of people had a lot to do with that. So I staying with family, and throughout my time in college, those first 2 years when I was not happy at all, I was able to grow spiritually. That's when I began to grow spiritually with my relationship with Christ. And so I went to New York kind of like in a different perspective, looking at people my age and younger and realizing how they were being influenced and affected by their surroundings, society, their homes, media, as well as my cousins that were living in New York at the time. And it really broke my heart. And so I actually met my mentor there as well, Allison Ski, through a mentoring program through the Arts and Business Council of New York. And she probably didn't know it at the time, but she was able to help me get through those thoughts that I was having, those doubts, some insecurities about my purpose for being here and the voice that I had, the validity of the voice that I had, and also some of the questions. And that was like a very transformational summer, I would say, because I was able to kind of step back and see a different side of the world that I did not have seen, that I would not have seen previously. And also, Allison was such an instrumental part in helping me to identify that as well in my personal growth.
Wow. So you are a proponent of mentorship.
Definitely.
Hmm.
I think it's crucial.
How would you say your family contributed to the career path that you have taken?
Mm, I think mostly their presence and their personal accomplishments. My there's a lot of I'm the youngest of five, and all of my siblings, there's like doctorates and law school and Ivy League schools. And I think that was a lot of my discontentment going to Georgia College as well. Like, I'm stuck here, Georgia College, but they helped me to realize that you are someone special. And even though you aren't doing the routes that we're doing, you're going to kind of be that different voice and go forth in that arts or that mentoring or that nonprofit field that you are seeking, and do it to the best of your ability.
You know, coming from a large family, I understand how wonderful it is to have siblings that can be there for you. But your parents, do you remember any special words of wisdom that from them that have shaped or helped to shape who you are today?
I remember a verse that my mom always said is, I can do all things with Christ who strengthens me.
Mm.
She said this every single time. Maybe if we got off the car and we were having a special presentation at school, or if we were heading to a recital, or if we were nervous, or if we had a bad day, she would just repeat that verse. I can do all things with Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13. I think that was kind of like ingrained in my mind, even now when I'm going through a hard time and when I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, that verse just pops up. I can do all things with Christ who strengthens me. And my dad, I wouldn't say I have a specific saying that I know him for, but it was definitely his humor and his love for life growing up. He had a weird work schedule, so I would see him maybe like 3 or 4 times a week. But when he was home, he brought definitely a love of life and laughter to the household. And it helped me to realize that everything is not serious, and it's great to show your personality and to also love on others.
You started a nonprofit organization called Truth in Chaos.
Hmm.
Where did that name come from? What inspired it? And what is your vision for it? But don't answer. Let's take a quick break.
Okay.
And, and we'll talk about that when we get back.
Okay.
All right. Okay, we are back with the lovely Keilah Johnson. Keilah, the question was the nonprofit organization Truth in Chaos. Where did that name come from? What inspired it? And what is your vision for the organization?
So that actually was not the original name for the nonprofit. The original name was Rebond. And the vision of it was to rebond adolescents from a relationship with the world to a relationship with Jesus Christ. And registered the name, and it was unavailable. And that was a blessing because now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing could have been called Rebond. So I sat down and I was like, Lord, what is this, that the goal of it? And started brainstorming and, okay, bringing your truth to the world, to media, to fill a void, to hearts. And what is all of that? It's all chaos. It's all chaotic.
Mhm.
And so that's where Truth and Chaos came from. It was like literally sitting down, not moving for 3 hours and saying, I'm going to leave here when I have a name. And Truth and Chaos was born. In the future, we are planning to launch an entertainment sector of the organization, which will include a short film called Truth and Chaos TV, a short film production sector that will help create positive messages to send to parents and educators, organizations, institutions about how youth, whether it be in middle school or high school, can solve problems that deal with things like violence, bullying, gangs, low self-esteem, cutting in a positive way. And so we want to create that those messages out there and be truth speakers to the youth because they have how to do it negatively on the media and the internet, TV. And so we want to create a positive way for those solutions.
Mhm. In the chat room, Ash asked a similar question, but a little spin on it. What prompted you to
Okay.
start the nonprofit business? But you answered that. But what is your business plan did you model to establish it? And how are you approaching funding since a nonprofit is not really a type of business to do?
hmm there were several business models that we looked at when establishing non Truth and Chaos, or I looked at. One was an organization called Do Something,
Hmm.
which is in New York City, and they work a lot with youth, teens, to help them be more positive about things like texting or homelessness or trash, things like that. But I liked how they use social media to speak a lot of their messages, to send a lot of their messages, and also how they were reaching both male and female audiences effectively. So organizations like that, as well as Girls Inc. and Boys and Girls of America, Boys and Girls Club, and also companies like Goodwill and Girl Scouts, because to answer your second question, we are starting to incorporate Truth and Chaos TV, which will be an earned income model for the organization. So that will help us with a lot of the funding. Since we are fairly new, we're not receiving any official funding right now besides donations from the community, which have been very helpful. But Truth and Chaos TV will be receiving monthly funding from whoever subscribes to that model that will go back to the organization. And then we're also applying for government grants that have a lot to do with the work that we're doing in the community, like combating teenage pregnancy and also local grants.
You said we a couple of times. How do you come up with these ideas or these initiatives? Is it a
I
brainstorming session?
Yeah, so a lot of it is talking with people
Hmm.
and visions that God gives me and asking for confirmation
Hmm.
from people around me or through His Word. And then we also have a board of directors that helps with a lot of the direction and things that need to be addressed in the community as well as the school systems as well.
Hmm.
And from there, just talking it over with a team of interns that we have. God has blessed Truth and Chaos with. I'm so grateful for that. So it's a kind of that process.
Hmm. Um, Prior to starting Truth and Chaos, What were you doing, and what sorts of ideas most occupy your thoughts?
Prior to Truth and Chaos, I was working my job that I started immediately after college for 9 months. And it was a very um, interesting position. It was very difficult. It was at a PR company in Atlanta, and it just was not the right fit for me. And so my decision to resign, I had no idea I was going to start a nonprofit. It was just praying for God to tell me that I could resign, that He was going, to provide. And so before Truth and Chaos, a lot of it was uh, sadness and stress and tired, tireless nights, sleepless nights, and yeah, it was very, very rough.
I want to go back in your timeline a little bit because your story is so fascinating. Can you give us a glimpse into the life of the 16-year-old Keilah?
16-year old.
Hold on, just so there are three parts to it. 16-year-old Keilah today, and who do you believe she's evolving into?
Oh, okay. So the 16-year-old Keilah was a girl in high school who was very loud with and had was full of personality around her close friends that were mostly girls and her family. Um, she was very involved in after school activities. She was a cheerleader, and um, she was very nice. People knew her as being very nice and not really having cliques, but wanting to talk to everyone. And she was also very shy at the same time when it came to interacting with boys or people that were older. Like older as in people around my mom's age, mom and dad's age. The Keilah that's now is very intentional about empowering
Mm-hmm.
anyone that she interacts with, whether it be child, teen, adult, to just help them to see that they have so much potential in their lives. And I'll speak in first person, I am excited about what is to come, but also a little impatient because I want it so soon. And the Keilah in the future, I hope, will uh, be very pleased with the work that she has done in the past few years, and will have a nonprofit as well as helping to empower others and be a voice on the TV as well as a host of an empowerment talk show, and um, have a family.
Wonderful. You spoke of Alison Ski to have had a great impact on you and in influence. You spoke of your parents.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Outside of those three, uh, who has had some great impact on you as a child or as a person?
Hmm. I would say I look up to a lot of people that are speaking truth in the media, and these are just the first people that come to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Malala,
Mm-hmm.
she is amazing to me,
Mm-hmm.
and her journey that she has been through, and she's still being brave about speaking truth about women in her country.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just speaks volumes, and it's such encouragement for me because um, it says to me that it's okay to be brave, and that so many people are going to be encouraged by that um, braveness, by your path and your journey and your story.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else I would say is students like Gabrielle Douglas, who has such a powerful past. She's young, but she overcame so much. And she had a point where she said, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to give up. But she didn't allow that to overcome her success. And now she is such a voice, a powerful voice for so many girls today, and for myself as well, to just never give up. And because if you give up, where would you be?
Saying that, can you tell us of a particular challenge that you have overcome that you're proud of?
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be like, very intimate and personal, but something, something that some particular challenge that I know. I think you mentioned some about being shy and how Allison, while you were here in New York, helped you. But is there anything else that
Yeah,
comes to
yeah, I
mind?
think that's a big one. That's a
Hmm.
big, huge one that actually has affected my entire life. And Allison had a huge part in that, as well as the internship that I did that summer had a huge part in that. When I was younger, I was, like I said, I was very loud and full of personality around people that I was comfortable with. But when it got to being around guys or people of different races, like older executives that were maybe Caucasian, I was just, I would just kind of, just be very quiet and stand still and not speak up or not ask questions. But that internship that I did that summer, Allison pouring into me, and my internship I did the next summer, and then also being in Milledgeville. And Milledgeville had a very small African American population. So surrounded, most of the times a class of like 60, you'd be the only black person. And it was extremely small, maybe like 200 black people out of 6,000 people.
Wow.
So you had to really just immerse yourself in that culture and be comfortable. And so having those experiences helped me to become the person that I am today. Reaching out to males that I see that I'm like, hey, what's going on? Have some more respect for her, singing in love, or talking to executives for Truth and Chaos, for funding, or for getting into schools, for political inquiries. It just has gone so far, and I'm so grateful for that particular stride.
What are the most common? I'm going to ask you this question, and then I'll go into the chat room. I see some questions in there. What are the most common types of problems you see young people dealing with today?
Lust
Lust.
has really taken over, consumed so many aspects of our youth. I mean, it's from seeking, lust has been, um, and it's like equivalent to love for a lot of people. They're really seeking love, but they're getting less, and less is good enough. And so they're taking it and they're running with it. And so it's coming out in a lot of different ways. So for youth, starting as young as like 9, addictions to pornography and masturbation. For people that are older, you have pimps that are taking over the sex trafficking industry. Atlanta is number one for sex trafficking. And so you have girls on the street that are 11 being kidnapped and taken into this world. And in relationships, cheating is occurring. Infidelity, monogamy is like, oh, monogamous? I'm not going to do that until I'm 40. It's just been huge, and it's really starting to consume the lives of youth at an early age that is, taking over their habits, our habits, at a later age into our adulthood.
In the chat room, Ash said, have well asked rather, have you established a board to help with governance and funding? Who else is on board with you working at TIC? Um, and Sandra asked, where does one go to make donations?
Oh, awesome. So to answer the first question, we do have a board for Truth and Chaos, And it is a very new board, but I'm so happy to have them. And they exist of different social workers in DeKalb County in Georgia, social workers in Georgia, as well as spiritual coaches, Christians, therapists, business people that are all just passionate about making a difference. And most of them reside in Georgia, and they are all different backgrounds and ages.
Hmm.
Yes.
And Ash asked,
So
oh,
for donations, we actually
donations,
have a
sorry.
link on our website for donations that is easy to go to on truthandchaos.org.
Okay. And Alison asks, how does the independent business affect your views in the sense of the chaos regarding providing health and medical coverage for yourself and those working with you?
Mm, that's a good question. So that is a big question that I am still seeking to answer a lot of it. But I think that Obamacare is going to help with that a lot.
Hmm.
The Affordable Health Care Plan, excuse me, is going to help with that initiative and helping to make it easier for small businesses to have healthcare plans. Later in the fall, where we hope to have salaries for people that are going to come on board for the organization, we want to have those healthcare plans in place for them. Definitely. So,
Okay.
yeah, that's in the future.
How do you see violence, such as violent scenes on television, movies, video games, and music videos affecting young people today?
It's huge, Selwyn.
Hmm.
There's a huge statistic out that says by the age of, I believe it's 16,
Hmm.
we would have seen over 200,000 acts of violence on just TV alone. That's excluding online, your phone, in person. And it has huge effects. So we have a mentoring program at a high school in Atlanta. It's in the inner city of Atlanta called, in the area called The Bluff. There's a movie named after it called Snow on the Bluff. It's an extremely um, it's a low income area, and so the students are struggling with a lot of things. And I had a talk with some of the sophomore males that went to the school, and he actually said that we were talking about violence, and he said after he listens to a violent song that talks about shooting or killing or stabbing, or after he finishes playing a video game, he immediately wants to go out and start a fight with somebody or kill someone. And that was the same opinion of the majority of the sophomores that were in there as well. So it has a huge impact. Studies have shown that the music that these students are listening to, that students, but teens, young adults, people listen to, helps to shape your view on violence. It makes violent acts seem less than they really are.
Hmm. Um, Martin Luther King Jr. said, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." You have a passion for helping people, Keilah.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on friendship?
Mm. Friendship. So friends, it's friend that I'm really at a stage in my life where I'm realizing it's important to have not only stable friends
Hmm.
around me, but also friends who are seeking uh, the same journey, and not my journey, because everyone's journey is different. But if I can go to them and they are, still trying to succeed and not just okay with being stagnant in their life. So it's so important, not just now, not when just when you've established your career, but when you're 13, when you're 5, to have friends that are positive around you, because you're going to become who your 5 friends are. They're going to have such a huge impact on you. And
Hmm.
so if you are trying to get to M and your friends are okay with staying at C, then that's not okay. So friends are, it's a very important part of my life, and I try to surround myself around a small group of people who are constantly encouraging me. And when I'm discouraged, they uplift me with God's word and his truth.
Mm-hmm.
And also who I can look at their lives and be encouraged as well.
For 2 years, you advised students as a career peer advisor. What was your experience like as an advisor, and what did you learn about yourself during that period?
Hmm. I think I learned that I really like to edit things. It was like kind of I learned tactical things about myself. So I really enjoyed the editing process that went involved into that career advising. So we looked at resumes for the students, and then also I realized how much of a lack there was, no matter what background you had, of career preparation. So many people would come in, they would be seniors, and their resume would be 3 pages long. It would have volunteer experience from high school, and it would have, they would have a really important job that needed to be highlighted, but it was only a sentence long. And so it was kind of like, whoa, something needs to be done here that is not being taught in colleges that needs to be taught, because when you leave college, you have your resume, you have what you have in your mind, you have some textbooks, and that's it. You just really, your resume is your voice. So I think that it helped me to realize a lot of the preparation that needs to happen in college, but also before college in a youth that is missing in the curriculum for universities and
Mm-hmm.
schools.
The advent of social media um, has made a serious impact on all of us, and especially young people, your generation. Um, what are some of the significant trends you have noticed among young people regarding social media?
I think correlating it back to some of social media's negative effects are how youth, and particularly middle school students, are starting to associate their language on social media with their language in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So, you'll get, or you'll hear stories, or if they have to write something for me, they're using shorthand, or they don't know how to spell certain words, which is unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one effect that social media is having. And also, going with the negative, is being exposed to a lot of things. So a parent has parental controls a lot of the times on TV or on the computer, but on the phone, which students are getting like in fourth grade now, an iPhone, or even earlier, they have that control. They're open to anything. If they're on Facebook and they're following certain people, then they can see something that they do not need to be seeing until 10 years later. And that can really help, not help, but hurt their development, and hurt them on down the line as well. So I think that's another huge thing about social media.
Let's take a quick break.